Hey physics, Tyler here. The most watermelon sliced on a human stomach in 1 minute is 49 times. And the most cuts in a straw mat in 1 minute is 89 times. The sword is one of the most primitive forms of slicing. But what are other words for slicing? Chop, wedge, portion, sliver, cut. But what is cutting? Cutting, defined by the dictionary, is the act of making an incision with a sharp object, like a knife, pushing the objects away from each other. But if I cut a piece of wood at the subatomic level, doesn't it also cut the atoms?
Well, not really. A normal knife doesn't cut at all at the atomic level. It simply puts so much pressure on the material locally that it breaks or tears. Having said that, the physical explanation for what happens in detail when two materials split apart is complicated and not fully understood. However, we do have an example that involving butter that could easily explain why this phenomenon happens.
Imagine squashing a block of butter with the palm of your hand. The butter has to move out of the way, so it's squeezed sideways and it gets flattened. Now use the edge of a knife. The edge has much less surface area, which allows for for the pressure to be much higher, and it's a lot easier for you to push the tool through, as shown.
That's a great example, but let's watch something a little bit more extreme. Watch my good friend Nick here cut open this pineapple in slow motion with the sword. As soon as the sword makes initial contact with the pineapple, it creates an immense force of friction between the blade tip and the pineapple, resulting in the opening incision. Now, as the blade moves to the pineapple, that friction is still there, but what actually propels the blade forward is the amount of force that is concentrated on the blade tip that is hitting the pineapple, resulting in the slice. Now, that's organic matter we're cutting. But if we were cutting a piece of wood, it might look the same, but there's actually a different complicated process happening. You see, for organic matter, such as bread or the skin on your body, cutting is a straightforward process because we're just breaking apart the cells and proteins, and also because your skin's much more flexible than a piece of wood. But for inorganic matter, however, it's much more complicated. You see, my good friends at Penn State work with this kind of stuff in nano-indention experiments, the cutting of ceramics with a nanoscopic tip. What they found is when using a blade to cut a piece of wood or some hard object, you're actually pushing the atoms away, displacing them, making way for the blade.